Riverside woke up to the sound of factory whistles and the rumbling of trains loaded with coal. The city of 400,000 people lived at its own steady pace. Factories on the outskirts smoked from dawn, office buildings in the center filled with clerks and managers, and in the residential areas, another day began for ordinary people with ordinary problems. Savannah Gray turned on the coffee machine at Morning Bean at exactly 6 in the morning. The cafe was located in an old brick building on Main Street, between a barber shop and an electronics store. Through the large windows, she could see the intersection, where the first pedestrians and cars of workers rushing to their shifts were already bustling about. "Good morning, Sev," Mr. Patrick greeted her as he came in for his usual double espresso. The elderly man had been an accountant at City Hall for 20 years and knew all the town gossip. "Good morning," Savannah smiled as she prepared his order. At 24, she looked older than her age. A difficult childhood after her parents died in a car accident had left its mark. Her dark hair was always neatly tied back in a ponytail, and her gray eyes rarely showed strong emotions. The job at the cafe was temporary. She was saving money to go to college and become a social worker. "I heard your boyfriend got a new contract to build a shopping center," Patrick said, taking out his wallet. "Lucky young man." "Yes, Tyler is very happy," Savannah replied. "It's a big project for his team." She didn't add that Tyler had seemed troubled to her the night before. Something in his behavior had changed after he got the job. Usually open and talkative, he had become withdrawn, often lost in thought. At 7 in the morning, the bell above the door rang, and Detective Gordon Harris entered the cafe. A large, middle-aged man with a receding hairline and a tired face, he was a regular customer. A gun was visible under his jacket, and he wore an expensive watch on his wrist, clearly not something a police officer could afford on his salary. "The usual detective?" Savannah asked. "Of course, dear." A large coffee, no sugar. He placed a $10 bill on the counter for a coffee that cost $2. "Keep the change." Detective Harris's generous tips were the talk of the town. Savannah never understood where he got the money, but she took the tips without question. She needed every dollar for her studies. "By the way," Harris said, sipping his coffee, "tell your boyfriend that construction is dangerous work, especially when you're working with the wrong people." He looked her straight in the eye. "Tell him that some contracts are better left untouched." Savannah felt a chill in her stomach. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing in particular." Harris finished his coffee and headed for the exit. "Just friendly advice. Take care of yourself, girl." After he left, Savannah couldn't concentrate on her work. The detective's strange words kept running through her head. What did he mean? And why has Tyler been so nervous lately? At 10 in the morning, she called her boyfriend. "Hi, how's the construction site?" she asked. "Fine." Tyler's voice sounded tense. "Listen, I'm going to be late today. We're having problems with the delivery of materials." "Tyler, what's going on? You've been acting strange lately." Pause. "Everything's fine, Sav. Just a lot of work. See you tonight." Meanwhile, 20 blocks away from the cafe, at the construction site of a future shopping center, Tyler Romero was trying to focus on his work. A tall guy with a strong build and calloused hands, he had been working as a builder for 5 years after graduating from high school. The plan was simple: save money, marry Savannah, maybe start his own construction company. But 2 weeks ago, everything changed. "Hey, Romero!" His foreman, Jimmy Collins, called out to him. "The boss wants to see you." Tyler put down his tools and walked over to the construction trailer. Inside, not only was company owner Rick Stone waiting for him, but also an unfamiliar man in an expensive suit. "Tyler, meet Mr. Vasquez," Stone said, clearly nervous. "He's our project partner." Vasquez extended his hand. "Nice to meet you. I hear you're a reliable guy." "Thanks," Tyler replied, shaking the cold hand. "We need a small favor," Vasquez continued. "When pouring the foundation for the east wing, we need to leave a small cavity, say 2 by 3 meters. purely for technical reasons. Tyler frowned. A cavity in the foundation? That will compromise the entire structure of the building. Don't worry about it. Vasquez smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. We know what we're doing. You'll get paid extra for it, say $10,000 in cash. $10,000. Almost a year's salary. With that money, he could rent a better apartment, propose to Savannah. What if I refuse? Tyler asked. Vasquez exchanged glances with Stone. No one's forcing you. But the construction contract can be revoked. There are plenty of construction crews in town. The threat was veiled but clear. Tyler looked at Stone, but Stone looked away. Okay, Tyler said finally, but I want to know what this space is for. Storage, Vasquez replied curtly. Nothing special, just goods. Tyler realized it was better not to ask what kind of goods. Everyone in Riverdale knew about the drug problem. An industrial town with high unemployment was the perfect place for dealers. But $10,000. When do I start? He asked. Tomorrow morning. And Tyler, Vasquez put his hand on his shoulder. This stays between us, okay? Not even your girlfriend should know. Now, standing on the construction site, Tyler regretted his decision. Every noise made him turn around. Every stranger seemed like a threat. And yesterday, he noticed Detective Harris's police car outside the cafe. He stared through the window for a long time, right at Savannah. Coincidence? Tyler didn't believe in coincidences. During his lunch break, he sat in his truck trying to decide what to do. Walk away from the deal? But then he would lose his job, and he had no other offers. Tell Savannah? But then he would put her in danger. The phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello? Tyler Romero? The unfamiliar voice was calm, almost friendly. Yes. We know about your job at the construction site. We know about the cavity in the foundation. We have a proposal. Tyler's heart began to beat faster. Who is this? People who can help. Meet us tonight at 8, Old Warehouse on Industrial Road, building number 42. Come alone. And if I don't come? Then tomorrow morning, Detective Harris will receive some interesting information about illegal operations at the construction site, and photos of you receiving money from Vasquez. The line went dead. Tyler sat in his car, clutching his phone tightly. Someone was watching them. Someone knew about the deal, and now he was being drawn deeper into a game he didn't understand. He looked at his watch. He had 6 hours until his meeting with Savannah, 8 hours until the mysterious meeting at the warehouse. Tyler started the engine and drove back to the construction site, unaware that today would be the beginning of a chain of events that would destroy his life and the life of the only person he loved. At the cafe, Savannah served the last customers of the day, thinking about the strange conversation with Detective Harris and Tyler's nervousness. She didn't know that in a few days she would be standing over her lover's coffin, planning revenge on those who killed him. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. The old industrial district of Riverdale was sinking into twilight. Abandoned warehouses and workshops from the coal boom stood like monuments to the city's better days. Building number 42, a former auto parts warehouse, had been empty for 3 years after its owner went bankrupt. Tyler parked his pickup truck around the corner and walked to the warehouse. His heart was pounding, and his mouth was dry. He had spent the whole day wondering whether he should come, but there was no alternative. Whoever had called had compromising material. The warehouse door was ajar. Inside, a single light bulb gave off a dim glow. Tyler entered, looking around. The room was empty, except for some old boxes in the corner and the smell of motor oil. Tyler Romero, a voice called out from the darkness. A man in a dark jacket emerged from behind a rack. His face was indistinguishable. Did you call? We know about your work with Vasquez, said the stranger, not answering the question. The cavity in the foundation. $10,000. A nice sum for a simple builder. What do you want from me? The man took a step forward but remained in the shadows. Information. When exactly are you pouring the foundation? How big is the cavity? Who else knows about it? Who are you? People who want to stop what Vasquez is planning, the voice replied. Do you know what that cavity is for? Tyler was silent. Of course, he guessed. Drugs, contraband, something illegal. But it was scary to admit it out loud. Vasquez is working with the police, the stranger continued. Detective Harris gets his cut from every shipment. And your girlfriend works at the cafe where Harris drinks his coffee every morning. It's convenient for surveillance. What do you mean? Harris knows about your relationship. If something goes wrong, Savannah could get hurt. His blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? We're warning you. Vasquez doesn't forgive betrayal, and Harris is even tougher. A second voice came from the right. Time's up. Tyler turned and saw a flash. Something heavy hit him on the head. He fell to the concrete floor, trying to understand what was happening. The world swam before his eyes. Nothing personal, kid, he heard through the ringing in his ears. But you know too much. The last thing Tyler remembered was a face in the light of a flashlight. A familiar face. The face of a man he saw every day at the construction site. Savannah closed the cafe at 9 p.m. as usual. Tyler was supposed to pick her up, but he didn't show up. She called him, but his phone was turned off. That was strange. Tyler never turned off his phone and always let her know if he was going to be late. She caught a taxi and went to his place. Tyler rented a small apartment in an old building on the outskirts of town. The landlady, Mrs. Kovrin, met her on the porch. Savannah, dear. Tyler hasn't come home. I've been waiting all evening. He promised to fix my faucet. Her anxiety grew. Savannah sat down on the steps and waited. Maybe he was having car trouble or urgent work, but why was his phone off? At 11:30, a police car pulled up to the house. Savannah jumped up, her heart skipping a beat. Detective Harris and a young officer in uniform got out of the car. Miss Gray? Harris took off his cap. I'm afraid I have some bad news. The world stopped. What happened to Tyler? He was found an hour ago in a warehouse on Industrial Road. He's dead. The words seemed to fly past her ears. Savannah heard them but couldn't understand their meaning. Dead? Tyler? That's impossible. He called her this morning. He was alive, talking about work. How? She whispered. It looks like an accident, said the young officer. Harris shot him a warning glance. He fell and hit his head on the concrete floor. He may have slipped. What was he doing in the warehouse? We don't know, Harris replied. Maybe he was looking for building materials. These guys sometimes take scrap metal from abandoned sites. Savannah couldn't believe her ears. Tyler never stole. He was an honest man, a man of principle. And slip? He had been working on construction sites for 5 years and was used to all kinds of surfaces. Can I see him? Tomorrow, at the morgue. Harris put his hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry, girl. I know you were close. After the police left, Savannah sat on the steps in shock. Mrs. Kovrin brought her tea, but she couldn't drink it. She couldn't think. Tyler was dead. Simple words that didn't fit in her head. It wasn't until morning that she made it back to her apartment. She didn't sleep all night, staring at the ceiling and remembering every minute of the last few days. Something was wrong. Tyler was anxious, nervous, and Detective Harris had warned him about the wrong kind of people. Savannah didn't go to work that morning. The owner of the cafe, Mrs. Parker, was understanding. Death in a small town is an event that affects everyone. Instead of going to work, Savannah went to the construction site. Maybe Tyler's colleagues knew something. Foreman Jimmy Collins met her at the gate. Savannah, my condolences. He took off his helmet. Tyler was a good guy. Jimmy, what was he doing last night? Why was he at that warehouse? Collins frowned. I don't know. He worked until 6, as usual. He said he was rushing home to see you. Did he have any problems? Was he in conflict with anyone? No, everything was fine. Collins looked around as if afraid of being overheard. Although he seemed worried the last few days, but he didn't say why. What about this new order, the shopping center? What about it? Tyler said you have a new partner on the project. Collins's face changed. Savannah, it's better not to ask unnecessary questions. When is the funeral? The sudden change of subject made her wary. The day after tomorrow. Jimmy, are you hiding something? I'm not hiding anything. Just take care of yourself, okay? There are a lot of dangerous people in this city. At the morgue, Savannah had trouble recognizing Tyler. His face was distorted from the blow, and there was a large wound on his head. The pathologist, Dr. Miller, showed her the death certificate. A skull fracture caused by a fall, he explained. Death was instantaneous. Doctor, could it have been something other than a fall? Miller looked at her in surprise. What do you mean? Could he have been hit? Miss Gray, the police have examined the scene. No signs of a struggle or violence. An accident. But Savannah saw the doubt in his eyes. The doctor was not telling her everything. Can you show me the wound? Miller hesitated, then lifted the hair on Tyler's head. The wound was oddly shaped, not like it was from a fall on a flat surface, but as if from a blow with a heavy object. Doctor, Miss Gray, I can't discuss the details of the investigation. Please contact Detective Harris. After the morgue, Savannah drove to the warehouse where Tyler had been found. The building was cordoned off with yellow tape, but she slipped inside through a side door. There were traces of blood on the floor, but nothing else of interest. She walked around the warehouse trying to figure out what had happened here. Why did Tyler come here? He never mentioned this warehouse, and even if he was looking for materials, why in the evening, in the dark? At the exit, she noticed a cigarette butt, fresh, still smelling of tobacco. So someone had been smoking here recently, after Tyler's death, or before. That evening, Savannah sat in her apartment, going through Tyler's things that he had left with her. In the pocket of his work jacket, she found a folded piece of paper with the address of the warehouse where he had been found dead. The address was written in Tyler's handwriting, so he had planned to go there. But why? On the other side of the paper was a time, 8 p.m., and a name, Vasquez. Savannah had never heard that name before. Who was Vasquez? And why was Tyler supposed to meet him? She picked up the phone and dialed the police. The dispatcher answered. I want to talk to Detective Harris about Tyler Romero's death. The detective is off duty for the day. What exactly is troubling you? I found a clue. A note with the address of a warehouse. Bring it to the station tomorrow morning. The detective will take a look. Savannah hung up. Tomorrow morning. For now, she was alone with her suspicions and her growing certainty that Tyler had been murdered. She took a notebook out of the drawer and wrote on the first page, Tyler Romero. Murder. October 15th, 2025. Then she wrote a list of questions. Who is Vasquez? Why was Tyler meeting with him? Why did Harris warn about the wrong people? What was the new project at the construction site? Why was everyone silent? Savannah didn't know that the answers to these questions would lead her to a truth that would change her whole life. That in a few days, she would be planning the murder of the people who had taken away the only person close to her. For now, she was just a girl who had lost her beloved. But the seeds of revenge had already been sown. The Riverdale Police Department was located in an old brick building in the city center, next to City Hall. Savannah arrived there at 10 in the morning, clutching the note she had found in Tyler's pocket. She had spent a sleepless night, replaying the events of the last few days over and over in her head, looking for clues. Detective Harris is expecting you, said the officer on duty at the front desk, and led Savannah down the hall to a small office. Harris was sitting at a worn desk covered with folders. On the wall hung photographs from various crime scenes and a map of the city with colored pins. The detective looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Have a seat, Miss Gray, he said, pointing to a chair across from him. What do you have? Savannah placed the note on the table. I found this in Tyler's jacket pocket. The address of the warehouse and the name, Vasquez. The meeting time, 8 o'clock in the evening. Harris took the piece of paper and studied it carefully. Savannah watched his expression, but the detective remained impassive. Interesting, he finally said. But it doesn't change anything. Maybe your boyfriend was planning to meet someone about work, but they didn't show up. Tyler was left alone and slipped in the dark. Who is Vasquez? It's a common surname. I can check the database, but without more information, it will take time. Savannah felt the detective dismissing her. Are you even going to investigate Tyler's death? Miss Gray, I understand your grief. Harris leaned back in his chair. But sometimes accidents are just accidents. There's no need to look for conspiracies where there aren't any. What if I find this Vasquez myself? The detective's eyes narrowed. I wouldn't recommend it. If this man is involved in anything illegal, it could be dangerous for an ordinary girl. Do you know what he's involved in? I don't know anything. Harris stood up. And I advise you to leave the investigation to the professionals. Organize the funeral, mourn, move on with your life. It will be better for everyone. Leaving the station, Savannah was furious. The detective was clearly hiding something. His reaction to the name Vasquez was too calm, and his warning about danger was too specific for someone who knows nothing. She decided to start with the internet. At the city library, sitting at a computer in the reading room, Savannah searched for information about Vasquez. Social networks, phone directories, news sites, nothing. Either there was no one with that surname in Riverdale, or he carefully avoided publicity. Then she tried a different approach. News about drug trafficking in the city over the past year. There were quite a few articles. Riverside had been struggling with the drug problem for several years. Heroin came from the big cities, and local dealers distributed it in schools and working-class neighborhoods. In one of the articles, Savannah stumbled upon an interesting detail. The police had raided an auto parts warehouse, the very one where Tyler had been found. That was 8 months ago. 3 men had been arrested with a large shipment of heroin. But the case fell apart in court due to procedural violations during the arrest. One of the arrested men had the last name Vasquez, Miguel Vasquez, 38, previously convicted of drug trafficking. Savannah's heart beat faster. So Tyler was supposed to meet with a drug dealer? But why? Tyler never used drugs. He rarely even drank alcohol. She printed out the article and several photos from the raid. One of them showed Miguel Vasquez, a short, dark-skinned man with a thick mustache and cold eyes. That evening, Savannah went to the Anchor Bar, an establishment on the outskirts of town where, according to rumors, people of questionable reputation gathered. She had never been there before, but she knew that places like this were the best source of city gossip. The bar was dark and smoky. A burly bartender with tattoos on his arms stood behind the counter, and in the corner, several men in work clothes were playing pool. Savannah ordered a beer and sat down at a table by the window. "You're new here," said a man in his 40s wearing a leather jacket as he approached her. "Not from around here?" "I'm from around here," Savannah replied. "I just don't go to bars very often." "I see. You look upset. Problems?" Savannah hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "I lost my boyfriend. They say it was an accident, but I don't believe it." The man sat down next to her. "What was his name?" "Tyler Romero. They found him in an old auto parts warehouse." The man's expression changed. "Oh, him. I heard about him. They say he was sticking his nose where it didn't belong." "What business?" The man looked around, lowered his voice. "Vasquez used to store his stuff in that warehouse before the cops busted him. Maybe your boyfriend saw something he shouldn't have. Where's Vasquez now?" "He's not in town anymore. He left after the raid, but his business continues. New people have arrived." "What people?" "Listen, girl," the man stood up. "Don't dig too deep. There's a lot of dirt in this town, and those who dig in it get buried quickly. Your boyfriend isn't the first. He left, leaving Savannah alone with her beer and new suspicions. So Tyler really had stumbled upon something serious, and he was killed to keep him quiet. The funeral was the next day. About 50 people gathered at the small St. Peter's Church, Tyler's colleagues, neighbors, acquaintances. Savannah sat in the front row, staring at the coffin with dry eyes. The tears were gone, leaving only emptiness and a cold determination to find out the truth. After the service, a young policeman in uniform approached her. He was tall and blonde, with a serious face and tired eyes. "Miss Gray?" "Officer Michael Thorne. My condolences." "Thank you." Savannah didn't recognize him. "Did you work with Detective Harris?" "Yes, I'm new to the precinct." "I was transferred here a month ago." Thorne hesitated. "Miss Gray, can I talk to you in private?" They moved away from the crowd. Thorne looked around nervously. "I saw the report on your boyfriend's death," he said quietly. "And I disagree with Detective Harris's conclusions." Savannah's heart skipped a beat. "Meaning?" "The wound on Tyler's head doesn't look like it was caused by a fall. It looks more like it was caused by a blow from a heavy object. And there were no protrusions or sharp corners in the warehouse that could have caused such an injury. Do you think he was murdered?" "I think the case needs to be investigated more thoroughly. But Detective Harris closed it as an accident." "Why?" Thorne looked at Harris approaching. "Not here. Let's meet tomorrow evening. The Morning Grain Cafe where you work, after closing time." "Thorne," Harris called out, "what are you doing?" "Offering my condolences, sir," the young officer replied and walked away. Harris approached Savannah. "What were you talking about?" He just expressed his sympathy. "Miss Gray, Officer Thorne is young and inexperienced. He may give you the wrong advice. If you have any questions about the case, please contact me." That evening, Savannah sat at home thinking about her conversation with Thorne. Finally, she had found someone who shared her doubts. But why would a young officer risk his career by going against his superior? She took out her notebook and added new entries. Miguel Vasquez is a drug dealer connected to the warehouse. Thorne suspects murder. Harris is hiding the truth. Drugs were previously stored in the warehouse. Then she wrote separately, Harris receives money from drug dealers? If that's true, then everything falls into place. Tyler accidentally found out about the corruption, was summoned to the warehouse under the pretext of meeting with Vasquez, and was killed there. Harris covered up the investigation to hide his involvement, but how could she prove it? The next evening, Savannah waited for Thorne at the cafe. He arrived at 8:30, when the last customers had left. "Thank you for coming," Savannah said, pouring him a cup of coffee. "I shouldn't be doing this," Thorne said, sitting down at a table by the window. "But I can't keep quiet either. Tell me what you know." Thorne took a deep breath. "Detective Harris has been working in Riverdale for 20 years. He has a reputation as an honest cop, but something has changed in recent years. Expensive watches, a new car, vacations in Europe. You can't buy that on a cop's salary. Do you think he's taking bribes?" "I don't think I know. I saw him meeting with people from the drug trade. He received envelopes with money, and for some reason, the cases against them fell apart in court." "Why didn't you report it to headquarters?" "To whom? Harris is a veteran. He has connections. And I'm a rookie, transferred here after getting into trouble at my old job." "What kind of trouble?" Thorne paused. "Debts. A lot of debt. Harris knows about it. He offered me a deal, to keep quiet about his business." "And you agreed?" "Not yet, but the pressure is mounting." Savannah realized that Thorne was taking as much of a risk as she was. If Harris found out about this conversation, "What are you proposing?" she asked. "We need evidence. Photos, recordings, documents. Something we can present to the authorities or the FBI. How do we get it?" "Harris meets with his contact every Thursday, an abandoned gas station on Highway 42, 10 miles from town. I could follow him and take photos. That's dangerous." Less dangerous than being part of a criminal scheme. Thorne stood up. Think about it. If you decide to help, let me know. I have a plan. After he left, Savannah sat in the dark cafe for a long time, thinking about what she had heard. So Harris really was corrupt, and Tyler had probably stumbled upon this scheme and paid for it with his life. She imagined the detective who came to the cafe every morning, tipped generously, and smiled at her, and then gave the order to kill her boyfriend. The anger that had been building for 3 days finally burst out. Savannah slammed her fist down on the counter with all her might. The pain shot through her arm, but it was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. Harris thought he could hide the truth, that a petite barista couldn't stand up to him, that he was untouchable. He was wrong. Savannah took out her phone and dialed Thorne's number. "I'm ready," she said when he answered. "Tell me your plan." She didn't know yet that very soon she would be standing over Detective Harris's body with a gun in her hand, that her thirst for justice would turn into a thirst for revenge, that a girl who had never hurt anyone would become a murderer. For now, she was just a person who wanted the truth. But the seeds of revenge had sprouted, and it was already impossible to stop what was about to happen. Thursday, October 23rd, 6:30 in the morning. Detective Gordon Harris parked his sedan at an abandoned gas station on Highway 42. The place was perfect for secret meetings, far from the city, surrounded by forest, with no one around for miles. He got out of the car, lit a cigarette, and looked at his watch. The contact was due to arrive in 10 minutes. Another routine meeting, another envelope of money for silence. $5,000 for not noticing certain trucks passing through town. Easy money for a cop who had already sold his soul. Harris didn't notice a young woman in dark clothes approaching the gas station from the woods. Savannah moved silently, using skills she had learned over years of solitude. How to be invisible, unnoticeable. In her hand, she clutched a heavy wrench stolen from the construction site where Tyler worked. "Detective Harris," she called, stepping out from behind an old gas pump. Harris turned around and blinked in surprise. "Savannah? What are you doing here?" "I came for answers," she said, slowly approaching him. "About why you killed Tyler." "What are you talking about?" Harris stubbed out his cigarette and put his hand on his holster. "Girl, you're out of your mind. Your boyfriend died in an accident. You're lying." Savannah stopped 3 meters away from him. "I know about your meetings with drug dealers. About the bribes. Tyler found out something, and you killed him." Harris slowly unfastened his holster. "Savannah, you're accusing a police officer. That's a serious charge. Let's go to the station and talk calmly." "No." She raised the wrench. "First, you confess. Who killed Tyler? Did you do it yourself, or did you order someone else to do it? Put that down." Harris pulled out his gun, but did not point it at her. "Savannah, I understand your grief, but you're crossing the line. You crossed the line when you took your first bribe." Savannah's voice was calm, almost indifferent. "When you decided that money was more important than justice. You don't understand how the world works." Harris took a step toward her. "Sometimes you have to make compromises." "And Tyler didn't want to make compromises?" The detective's face changed. The mask of friendliness slipped. "Your boyfriend was meddling in things that weren't his business. He saw what he shouldn't have seen." "What exactly?" "How I got money from Vasquez. He took pictures with his phone. He wanted to blackmail me. And you killed him." "Not me." Harris raised his gun and pointed it at Savannah. "But I ordered it. And you know what? I don't regret it. One drug-addicted construction worker versus a steady source of income for several cops. Tyler wasn't a drug addict. He would have been. They all become drug addicts, or alcoholics. Or they just break down from life." Savannah looked at the gun, then into Harris's eyes. "So you really did kill him?" "I was protecting my interests. And I'm still protecting them. Then shoot." Harris hesitated for a second. That was enough. Savannah threw the wrench with such force that it hit the detective in the temple before he could fire. Harris fell to the asphalt, the gun falling from his hand. Savannah approached him. The detective was unconscious, but still breathing. Blood flowed from the wound on his head. "This is for Tyler," she whispered, and raised the wrench. The second blow was fatal. At 8:30 in the morning, Detective Harris's body was discovered by a truck driver who had stopped at a gas station to rest. The entire Riverdale police force arrived at the scene, all 4 patrol cars and the medical examiner's vehicle. Officer Thorne stood next to the body, staring at the blood-stained asphalt. The murder of a police officer in a small town was an extraordinary event. Nothing like this had ever happened in Riverdale. "Someone hated him very much," said Dr. Miller, examining the wounds. "2 blows with a heavy object. The first one knocked him out, the second one killed him." "The murder weapon?" asked Captain Jenkins, the station chief. "Not found." "The killer took it with him." Thorne walked to his car and made a phone call. "State Police Headquarters? I need to report the murder of a police officer in Riverdale. Yes, we need a specialist to investigate." An hour later, Detective Anna Crawford arrived on the scene. A tall woman of 38 with short blonde hair and sharp green eyes, she was an Army veteran who had served in Afghanistan before joining the police force. She specialized in violent homicides. "I'm Detective Crawford, State Police," she introduced herself to Captain Jenkins. "I'll be handling this case." "We appreciate the help." Jenkins was clearly frightened. "Harris worked for us for 20 years. He was a respected man." Crawford examined the crime scene. There were no signs of a struggle except for blood on the asphalt. The detective's gun was lying next to the body. 1 bullet was missing, but the shell casing was not found. "Did he manage to fire a shot?" she asked the medical examiner. "There's gunpowder on his hand, but the bullet didn't hit anyone. Most likely he fired into the air or the ground, so the killer was quick. Or Harris knew him and didn't expect to be attacked." Crawford approached Officer Thorne. "Did you work with Detective Harris?" "Yes, ma'am. For a month, since I was transferred. What was your impression of him?" Thorne hesitated. "A good detective. Experienced. Did he have any enemies?" "Not that I know of." Crawford studied the young officer's face. He was holding something back. "What was Detective Harris doing here at this abandoned gas station?" "No idea." "Officer Thorne, I'm investigating the murder of your colleague. If you know anything, it's best to tell me now." Thorne looked at Captain Jenkins, then back at Crawford. "Can I talk to you in private?" They moved away from the others toward the woods. Thorne took a deep breath. "Detective Harris wasn't as honest as everyone thinks." "Explain." "I suspected him of having ties to drug dealers. I saw him meeting with shady people, receiving money." "Why didn't you report it?" "He knew about my debts. He blackmailed me. He threatened my career." Crawford wrote in her notebook. "Who else might have known about Harris's corruption?" "I don't know." "He was careful." "What about the recent death of Tyler Romero?" "Harris was handling that case." "Yes. He ruled it an accident, even though the circumstances were suspicious." "What circumstances?" Thorne told her about the wound on Tyler's head, the warehouse, the detective's strange behavior. Crawford listened attentively. "Where is Romero's daughter now?" "Savannah Gray?" "Probably at work." "She works at a cafe. I need to talk to her." The Morning Grain Cafe was closed. A note hung on the door. "Closed due to family circumstances." Crawford drove to Savannah's address, which Thorne had given her. The apartment on the 2nd floor of an old building looked empty. A neighbor said she hadn't seen Savannah since morning. "She was acting very strange yesterday," the elderly woman added. "She was pacing around the apartment late into the night, muttering something." Crawford returned to the station to study the Tyler Romero case. The file was thin. Detective Harris clearly hadn't spent much time investigating. Photos from the scene, a brief report from the medical examiner, statements from several witnesses. Nothing special, except for one detail. Among Tyler's personal belongings was a note with the address of a warehouse and the name Vasquez. Crawford found a file on Miguel Vasquez, a drug dealer arrested 8 months ago at the same warehouse where Tyler died. The case fell apart in court due to violations during the arrest. The lead investigator was Detective Harris. The picture was becoming clearer. Harris worked with drug dealers, receiving bribes for protection. Tyler somehow found out about it and was killed. And now Harris himself had been killed. But who? Vasquez's competitors? Or someone who knew the truth about Tyler's death? At 6 o'clock in the evening, the duty officer's phone rang. Another body. Officer Michael Thorne was found in his car in a parking lot near a supermarket. One shot to the head. The weapon was not found. The car was locked from the inside, but the driver's window was broken. Crawford arrived on the scene half an hour later. 2 police murders in one day was no coincidence. Time of death? She asked Dr. Miller. About an hour ago. Someone shot him from outside through the window. Witnesses? None. The parking lot was almost empty. Crawford examined Thorne's car. His cell phone was on the seat. The last call was at 5 o'clock today. The number was not labeled. She pressed the number and called. An answering machine picked up. "Hi, this is Savannah. Leave a message. Savannah Gray, the girlfriend of the deceased Tyler Romero." Crawford felt the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Thorne had told her about Harris's corruption. A few hours later, he was killed. The last person he spoke to was Savannah Gray, the girl who lost her boyfriend and suspected the police of killing him, the girl who was now missing. "Captain," Crawford called Jenkins, "I need a search warrant for Savannah Gray's apartment and a warrant for her arrest. You think she's connected to the murders?" "I think she is the killer." The search of Savannah's apartment yielded results. In the closet, Crawford found a notebook with notes about Tyler, Detective Harris, and Officer Thorne. Plans for revenge, addresses, meeting times. On the last page was written, "Justice has been served. Tyler has been avenged." In the trash can were blood-stained clothes. Analysis showed that the blood belonged to Detective Harris. In the next room was a map of the city with marked locations. The gas station where Harris was killed, the parking lot where Thorne was killed, and the third point was the bus station. Crawford looked at her watch. It was 8 p.m. The last bus from Riverdale left at 8:30. She ran to her car. The Riverdale bus station was small, 1 building, 3 platforms. Crawford showed the cashier a photo of Savannah. "Yes, she bought a ticket half an hour ago," the woman said. "To Chicago." "The bus leaves in 10 minutes. Crawford ran out onto the platform. The bus was at the second platform, and passengers were finishing boarding. She ran along the windows, peering into the faces. In the second-to-last row sat a young woman with dark hair, looking out the window. Savannah Gray. Crawford knocked on the bus door. The driver opened it. "Police," she showed her badge. "I need the passenger in the last row." Savannah didn't resist. She stood up, picked up a small bag, and calmly walked to the exit. There was no fear or remorse on her face, only fatigue. "Savannah Gray, you are under arrest on suspicion of murder," Crawford said, putting handcuffs on her. "I know," Savannah replied. "I killed them. Both of them." Several passengers gasped. The driver backed away. "Why?" Crawford asked. Savannah looked at her with tired eyes. "Because they killed Tyler, and the police did nothing. I had to do it myself. Officer Thorne was helping with the investigation. Why did you kill him?" "He was part of the system." Savannah's voice was calm, almost indifferent. "He knew about the corruption, but he kept quiet. He let them kill Tyler." Crawford put her in the car. On the way to the station, Savannah looked out the window at the passing city lights. "Now justice has been served," she said quietly. "Tyler has been avenged." Crawford said nothing. She had seen many killers, but Savannah was special. an ordinary girl whose grief and thirst for justice had turned her into a cold-blooded killer. In a few hours, Savannah would be sitting in a cell, awaiting trial, and the city would be trying to understand how a quiet barista had become an avenger who killed 2 police officers. The interrogation room at the Riverdale police station was small and stuffy. Beige walls, a metal table, 2 plastic chairs, and a video camera in the corner. Savannah Gray sat across from Detective Crawford, her hands folded on the table. The handcuffs had been removed, but the door was locked, and Captain Jenkins stood behind the observation glass. It had been 3 hours since the arrest. Savannah looked calm, almost relaxed. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Crawford studied her face, trying to understand the psychology of a woman who had killed 2 police officers in one day. The evidence lay in the folder in front of the detective, a notebook with plans for revenge, blood-stained clothes, witness statements. The case was ironclad, but Crawford wanted to understand the motives. What had turned a quiet barista into a cold-blooded killer? Savannah told her story in a monotone voice, without emotion. How she fell in love with Tyler, how they planned their future, how he changed in the last weeks before his death, becoming nervous and withdrawn, how Detective Harris made strange warnings about the wrong people. Tyler's death was a turning point. The official version of an accident did not convince Savannah from the very beginning. The wound on his head looked suspicious, and the circumstances of the discovery in the warehouse raised questions. A note with the name Vasquez in Tyler's jacket pocket was the first clue. Her search for information led Savannah to realize that corruption was rampant in the city. Detective Harris, who was supposed to fight crime, was himself part of a criminal scheme. He took bribes from drug dealers, covered up their activities, and eliminated inconvenient witnesses. Officer Thorne seemed like an ally when he offered to help expose Harris. But during questioning, it became clear that his motives were not so pure. Thorne did not want to fight corruption. He wanted to replace Harris as the recipient of bribes. The debts he mentioned were due to his gambling addiction. He needed money and saw Harris's death as an opportunity to take his place in the criminal scheme. Crawford wrote down every word, sometimes clarifying details. Gradually, a complete picture of the events that led to the tragedy emerged. Tyler did indeed stumble upon the corruption scheme by accident. While working on the construction of a shopping center, he noticed strange requirements for the foundation, the creation of a hidden cavity that was not indicated in the official drawings. The customer, who introduced himself as a partner in the construction company, turned out to be drug dealer Vasquez. The cavity was intended for storing large quantities of heroin. Tyler was offered $10,000 for his silence, an amount that was difficult for a young man planning a wedding to refuse, but Tyler was a man of principle. Instead of taking the money, he began to gather evidence of criminal activity. His fatal mistake was attempting to photograph Harris's meeting with Vasquez. Tyler followed the detective and spotted one of their meetings at the same abandoned gas station where Harris himself would later die. The photos were blurry due to the distance, but it was clear that Harris was receiving an envelope with money. Tyler didn't know what to do with this evidence. Should he go to the police? But the corrupt detective worked for the same police department. The FBI? But he didn't have enough evidence for a serious investigation. While he was thinking, Harris found out about the surveillance. Information spreads quickly in the criminal world, and the detective had his own sources. Tyler was summoned to a meeting under the guise of a new proposal for cooperation. The murder took place in the same warehouse where Vasquez's drugs had previously been stored. 2 men were waiting for Tyler, Vasquez himself and his assistant. They demanded his photos and phone where compromising material might be stored. Tyler refused, and a fight ensued. The blow to the head with a crowbar was intended to make the death look like an accident. Vasquez knew that Detective Harris would sweep the investigation under the rug, blaming it all on the carelessness of a young man who had entered an abandoned building in search of scrap metal. The plan worked. Harris did conduct a formal investigation and closed the case as an accident. Tyler's photos and phone disappeared, and the only evidence was a note with Vasquez's name on it, which the killers had missed in his jacket pocket. Savannah learned these details gradually, piecing together information bit by bit. A conversation with a visitor to the Anchor Bar confirmed Vasquez's connection to the warehouse. Officer Thorne revealed Harris's corruption, but concealed his true motives. And Detective Harris himself confessed to involvement in the murder at the gas station. The first murder was spontaneous. Savannah came to the gas station with the intention of recording Harris's confession on her phone. She wanted to obtain evidence to pass on to higher authorities. But when the detective pulled out a gun and essentially confessed to Tyler's murder, something snapped in her mind. The wrench was not taken from the construction site by accident. Subconsciously, Savannah was already preparing for violence, although she did not admit it to herself. The tool Tyler had been working with became the instrument of revenge for his death. The second murder was more deliberate. After Harris's death, Savannah realized that Thorne knew about her involvement. He called her demanding a meeting, hinting at blackmail. During the conversation, it became clear that the young officer planned to use the information about corruption for his own enrichment. Savannah took the gun from Harris's apartment, where she had climbed in through a window while the police were working at the scene of the murder. The detective lived alone. There was no alarm system, and the neighbors did not pay attention to the young woman, who could have been a relative of the deceased. She shot Thorne through the broken car window. The officer arrived at the meeting expecting to see a frightened girl ready to pay for her silence. Instead, he got a bullet in the head. Crawford listened to the story, taking notes in her notebook. The psychological portrait of the killer was becoming clearer. Savannah was not a born criminal or a psychopath. She was an ordinary girl whose grief and thirst for justice had driven her to extremes. The loss of Tyler was the catalyst. All the emotions that had built up over years of loneliness and struggle for survival burst out. The girl, who since her teenage years had been used to relying only on herself, decided to take justice into her own hands. The details of the planning showed that Savannah acted rationally and cold-bloodedly. She studied her victims' daily routines, chose the locations for the murders, and prepared the weapons. These were not crimes of passion, but a well-thought-out revenge. The detective was particularly struck by Savannah's reaction to her arrest. Most murderers either deny their guilt or become hysterical. Savannah, however, looked almost relieved. It was as if completing her mission of revenge was more important than her own freedom. When the main part of the interrogation was over, Crawford asked Savannah to describe the feelings she had experienced during the murders. The answer was unexpected. When she killed Harris, Savannah felt rage and pain. Each blow with the wrench was an outburst of pent-up emotions. She saw the detective not as a person, but as a symbol of the injustice that had taken her beloved away from her. The murder of Thorne was more cold-blooded. Savannah acted like a surgeon, precise and emotionless. The young officer was a threat to her safety, and that threat had to be eliminated. After the second murder, Savannah felt a strange emptiness. Her revenge was complete, but Tyler had not returned. Justice had prevailed, but her life had not improved. All that remained were memories and the realization that she had become a murderer. Her attempt to flee the city was not serious. Savannah knew that sooner or later she would be found. The ticket to Chicago was more of a symbolic gesture, an attempt to start a new life that was doomed to failure from the outset. The arrest was a relief. The burden of secrecy and guilt that she had been carrying for the last few days was finally lifted from her shoulders. Savannah was ready to take responsibility for her actions. During the investigation, other details of the corruption scheme came to light. Detective Harris had been working with drug dealers for 3 years. During that time, tons of heroin passed through Riverdale and were distributed throughout the state. The profits amounted to millions of dollars. In addition to Harris, several other people were involved in the scheme. The port captain, who allowed containers to pass without inspection, a city official who issued permits for the construction of warehouses, and a judge who released arrested dealers on bail. Harris's death disrupted the entire chain. The other participants in the scheme panicked, and some began to testify in exchange for leniency. The corruption network that had been built up over years collapsed in a matter of days. Vasquez was arrested in a neighboring state a week after Harris's murder. The drug dealer tried to hide, but without the cover of a corrupt detective, he was quickly tracked down. He received a life sentence for drug trafficking and complicity in Tyler's murder. The town of Riverdale was in shock over the revelations. Residents who had trusted Detective Harris for years couldn't believe he was involved in drug trafficking. Many blamed Savannah for destroying the reputation of a respected officer. Others, on the contrary, considered her a heroine. Support groups appeared on social media, where people wrote that Savannah had done what the official justice system had failed to do. She was called a modern Joan of Arc, who sacrificed herself for justice. Savannah's trial began 6 months later. The defense sought a lenient sentence, citing the defendant's emotional state and the circumstances that led to the crime. The prosecution sought a life sentence for the murder of 2 police officers. Savannah herself refused to make a deal with the prosecution. She did not deny her guilt or ask for forgiveness. When asked by the judge if she regretted what she had done, Savannah replied with a simple no. The sentence was harsh: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Savannah listened to it calmly, without emotion. In her final statement, she said only one sentence: "Tyler has been avenged." Prison became not a punishment for her, but a refuge. In her cell, behind high walls, Savannah finally found peace. She read books, worked in the prison library, and wrote letters to the foster family who had raised her after her parents' death. A year after the trial, Savannah was found dead in her cell. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but those who knew her story understood that she was simply tired of living. Revenge had been taken, justice had prevailed, and there was no point in living anymore. A simple inscription was engraved on her tombstone: Savannah Gray. Loved and was loved, Tyler Romero was buried next to her grave. 2 young people whose lives had been destroyed by corruption finally found peace. Savannah's story became a legend in Riverdale. Some considered her a murderer, others a fighter for justice. But everyone agreed on one thing: corruption destroys not only institutions of power, but also human lives.